Hi everyone, it's April Garwood from Banana Moon Studio. I am working today on the next video in a series that I've made for instructions on how to make my free knitting pattern. It's called One Winter Set. It includes mittens and a headband and a cowl. And I've already done a video that shows how to make the ribbed cuff of the mitten. This video is going to take you through the construction of the gusset, the thumbhole, and probably the fingertip finishing, unless it gets too long, and then I'll have to cut it into two videos. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to turn around the camera and we're going to get started on the gusset of the mitten. Alright, so I'm working from this pattern today, which is the pattern for my Winter set. It's a free pattern you can find on my blog, or from there you can also purchase a PDF of the pattern if you'd like to have that. I already made a video where I showed you how to make this ribbed cuff, and now from there we're going to work on the heel of the hand, where we're going to be working some increases along this side to make room for the thumb. The first 3 rounds you just knit around, which I don't really need to show you, except that I want to point out that at this point you also have to switch to a larger needle size. I've been using size 9 needles, and now I need to change to size 10 needles. So I'm going to do that one needle at a time. First I'm going to change this one that my stitches are not on. And if you have an interchangeable needle set, this is pretty easy. If you don't have interchangeables, then you just have to start knitting onto your larger needles. But because I have interchangeable needles, I'm going to go ahead and change the one that I'm not working with right now to the larger size. And that way when I knit this next bunch of stitches onto my needle, they are going to be knit right onto, whoops, I dropped that. They're going to be knit right onto the larger size. Alright, so I'm going to knit every stitch from this smaller needle to the larger one. Alright, so I've knit the first half onto that. I'm going to turn this, slide this needle in, and this one out. And now I'm going to knit the second half of my stitches onto the larger needle. Okay, so at this point I have knit all the stitches onto this larger needle, so I'm going to go ahead and change this needle now to the larger size, and then I'm good to just work the next 2 rounds by knitting every stitch. So when I'm ready to do, well, I can't get that in there. When I'm ready to do an increase round, we'll pick this video back up so that I can show you how to work those increases. Alright, so I have knit 3 rounds around this cuff, and now I'm ready to do the first increase round. I'm going to do that by starting, I'm just going to knit 1 stitch, and then I'm going to do what's called a make one, which is a kind of increase. You're going to do that by finding this bar that's between the stitches. So I have a stitch here and I have a stitch here, and in between them is this bar. You want to pick it up through the front with your left needle. So you're going to go just under the front of it with your left needle, and then you're going to knit it through the back loop. And if you've never knit through the back loop, that looks like this. Normally for a knit we would go here Instead, we're going to kind of look at the back and go through here. And then you're still going to wrap your yarn just like for a knit stitch and pull it through. So you're knitting it through the back loop. Okay, and then at that point, you're going to knit every stitch around until you get to the last one. So I'm going to kind of speed up here through this, and then I'll show you that increase when I get to the end of the round. Alright, so I have just one stitch left on my left needle right here. And so to do another make one, I'm going to take this left needle under the bar between them, keep my yarn to the back, and then I'm going to go through the back loop. Wrap my yarn just like I'm doing a regular knit stitch and pull that through. That's a make one. And then I'm going to knit the last stitch. So that's how you do the increase rounds. This mitten is going to have you do, the pattern, excuse me, is going to have you do another 3 rounds of just knit stitches, and then another increase round, and then 3 more rounds of just knit stitches. So I'm going to knit 3 more rounds and then come back again so I can show you that increase round one more time. Alright, I've finished knitting 3 more rounds. Now I'm ready to show you that increase round one more time. So I'm going to start by knitting this first stitch. Now I'm going to do the make one. So I'm going to use my left needle and pick up under that, well, I split the yarn, pick up under this bar. And I'm going to knit it through the back loop. Like so. Now I'm going to knit all the way around to the last stitch. Now keep in mind in these instructions when it says knit each stitch to the last stitch, that's not the last stitch on this first needle, it's the last stitch of the round. So I still have to turn and work the stitches, the other half of the stitches that are on the second needle, and it's going to be the last stitch on this needle. So the very last stitch of the round, which is going to be over here. Alright, last stitch, I'm going to use my left needle to go under this bar. Then I'm going to go through the back loop, knit it, and knit the last stitch. And that's the increase round. So at this point in the pattern, I'll be knitting 3 more rounds, and then it'll be time to work on the thumb hole. So I'm going to turn the camera off, knit those 3 rounds, and then come back to you when it's time to work on the thumb hole. So we're ready to work on the thumb hole of this mitten. And we're going to start by binding off 2 stitches. And when you work on this pattern, you definitely want to use the specific bind off instructions that I've provided in the pattern. And again, you can find the link to this pattern down in the description box. So for this, we're going to start by knitting 2 stitches. And then it says place the left needle through the fronts of the 2 stitches on the right needle. So, well, wait a minute, what did I do here? Okay, here we go. Through there and there. Okay, and then it says knit 2 together through the back loop. So I'm going to wrap my yarn around my back needle this way and pull it through both of those stitches. And then it says knit 1, so I'm going to knit this stitch. And then I'm going to repeat this, going through these 2 stitches with the left needle, wrapping and knitting these 2 together through the back loop. Okay, so that's how I bind off those 2 stitches. At this point, I need to knit each remaining stitch, and then I'm not going to be working in the round anymore, so at that point I'm going to turn and do a wrong side row. So now I'm going to knit around and probably speed up this video, and then we'll talk again when it's time to bind off a couple more stitches. Alright, so at this point, what I need to do, instead of coming back and stitching here, my next stitch is actually going to be, I'm still going to be stitching here. So I'm going to leave this needle in these stitches, and at this point, I need to bind off 2 more stitches, and then I'll purl each remaining stitch of this row. So again, I'm going to follow the specific bind off instructions in this pattern. And that starts with purling 2 stitches. Alright, and then I'm going to place my left needle through the backs of these 2 stitches. Oop, my pattern's trying to fly away. Okay, I need to place it through the backs of these 2 stitches, which I didn't quite do. Okay, so it's through the backs of those 2 stitches. Then I'm going to purl 2 together by wrapping the yarn this way and pulling it through both stitches at the same time. I'm going to purl 1, and again place the left needle through the backs of these 2 stitches and purl the 2 together. And then I'm going to purl each remaining stitch of the round. Now, after I finish this row, after I've gone all the way around purling every stitch, my next round is going to be, my next row, because I'm not working in the round right now, My next row is going to include knitting every stitch around. And at that point, after I knit that row, I'm going to start working in the round again. So when I get to that point, we'll pick back up so that I can show you how to make that change back to working in the round. Alright, so I have finished the 3 rounds of the thumb hole, and now my instructions say join to work in the round, knit each stitch. So when I finished the last row of the thumb hole, I was right here with my needles. And so now I'm going to slide this needle in and pull this one out so that I can start knitting these stitches right here. And for rounds, so I'm going to do round 1 where I'm going to knit all the way around and keep just knitting all the way around for 16 total rounds. And then at that point I start decreasing for the fingertips. So at this point there's not a lot to this. I'm joining to work in the round, and I'm just going to keep knitting around and around and around for several rounds here. So I'm going to turn off the video for a while and come back to working on this mitten with you when it's time to work on the fingertip. I'm not actually going to knit a total of 16 rounds because that's not really necessary for this demonstration to knit 16. So anyhow, I'm going to knit a few rounds and then come back to this video and we will go through how to make the decreases for the fingertip. Now I've worked a few stitches between the thumb hole and where I am now, and even though the pattern wants you to make 16 rounds of knit stitches before you begin the decreases for the fingertip, for the sake of this demonstration I don't really need to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to work the decrease rounds for the fingertip of this mitten. So it's here, and you're going to be doing rounds 17 through 23 all the same way. So it starts with, it says SSK, that means slip, slip, knit. So you do that by going under this first stitch as though you're going to knit it and just slipping it off. The second stitch the same way, and then you're going to put the left needle through the fronts of these 2 stitches and knit them together through the back loop by going around this needle and pulling that through your stitches. That's a slip, slip, knit. Then the instructions say knit across first half of stitches to the last 2 stitches of that first half. So basically that means knit across this first needle until you have just the 2 stitches left. So now I'm going to knit across the first needle. Alright, so I have those 2 stitches left. Now I am going to knit 2 together. So that means I'm going to go through both of these stitches just like I normally would for a knit stitch. Let me show you that again. So here's one of them. Here's the second one. I'm going to go through both of them in regular direction, wrap my yarn around this needle, and pull it through both stitches at the same time. That's a knit 2 together. Now I'm going to repeat that for the second side. So turn, bring this needle into these stitches and pull this one out. Okay, so I'm going to work that SSK or slip, slip, knit again. Go in this stitch as though I were going to knit it, slip it off. Same for the second one. Put my left needle through the fronts of those 2 stitches. Wrap the yarn around the back needle and pull that through. Okay, now I knit across. I have 2 stitches left, so now I'm going to go through both of them at the same time. Wrap the yarn around the back needle, whoop, and pull that through. Alright, that's a knit 2 together. So now I'm going to do that same thing, and it's again round 17 through 23. I'll show you this one more time and then I'll stop the video until it's time to work just the very last round or two, because they're maybe a little bit finicky. Alright, so that SSK, knit across the first needle, okay, now I'll knit these 2 together. Turn to do the second half of the round. SSK, slip, slip, knit. Knit across this needle. Now we're going to knit these 2 together. Okay, so that's how you're going to work all of these rounds, and I'm going to turn the camera off while I work several more rounds, and then I will come back to it when I'm ready to work just the last few so you can see how those are going to go. Okay, I'm ready to work the very last round of decreases for the top of this mitten. I have 4 stitches left on each needle, and so I'm going to start by doing the slip slip knit, and then I'm going to immediately do the knit 2 together. There aren't going to be any stitches between them this time. Alright, and then I'm going to put this needle into these stitches and pull this one out. Slip, slip, knit. Sometimes it's a little hard to get that needle tip through there. And immediately knit 2 together. Okay, so now I have just 4 stitches left, and at this point I'm going to need a yarn needle, which I keep in this little bottle, and I'm going to need my scissors, okay. What I want to do at this point is cut a tail, like I'm going to cut my yarn, but I'm going to leave it pretty long. It doesn't really need to be quite that long, but I don't want to cut it too short either. And I'm going to put my yarn into my yarn needle. Alright, so the last one I did was this one. I'm going to slide this needle into these stitches and just run this yarn needle through both of them. Oops, things are slipping. Through this one and through this one. And now I can just take them off of the knitting needle. Pull that yarn through. And then I want to pull this needle into these stitches so I can take them off the needle tip. Alright, so the mitten is off the needles. I'm going to pull the yarn through the tops of these stitches. Now, I like to do just a little bit of a knot here just to help everything stay. And then I'm going to poke this down through here into the inside of the mitten and grab that needle from the inside. And at this point, if you want to, you can turn it wrong side out and weave your end in. And once you've woven in the end, then you can you'll be ready to start on the thumb of the mitten, which is going to be a video of its own. So I will see you again when it's time to work on the thumb of this mitten. It would help me out a lot if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel, and then check the description box below this video for links to my website where you can find the written pattern for this mitten and for a matching headband and cowl. And also, if you'll look in the description box, there will be a link there for where you can subscribe to my newsletter. That would also help me out a lot. So thank you very much, and I will catch you again soon. Have a great day.